a little bit worse for the short-term profits of businesses. In the long run, if you have greater productivity, that's good for them as well. But so there's the econ, but it's also, think about power, and the individual employers don't like to give up any bit of power that right now they have sort of almost dictatorial authority to say we're going to do X, Y, and Z at this moment. And if you have workers that unionize, they have ability to negotiate and push back a little bit, and that leads to something that companies...
So that's why they don't like unions. It's not the money, it's the power.
The steering wheel. And I think that conveys really what's going on here. This is, they're more about power than it is about the economics.
Because anecdotally, though, I mean, we've heard over the years companies say, we can't sustain if we have a workforce that's unionized. Our bottom dollar just can't really sustain that type of growth in wages and benefits in the ways that these workers are asking for. What I'm hearing from you is that by and large, there might be a slight loss in profits, but there's a longer tail for success.
Yeah, and in fact, the broader research around these kinds of economic questions about paying higher wages is really pretty clear. Most of the time, the companies will just, plead that the sky is falling. They can't do it. Perhaps the most studied issue under labor economics is the minimum wage, and I think it's a very similar analogy, especially when the first thought of going to $15 in Seattle, SeaTac, which is outside of there, was seen as such a big jump. No way business could ever, we're going to go out of business. They'll make the same claim for smaller increases. But in fact, then, let's look at it. What's happened? And study after study after study shows actually we see minimal to no employment effect. We see the workers doing significantly better. And the reason this occurs, that businesses aren't going out of business, is that actually there are a lot of things, and I think we're going to get into this later, that higher wages do that are good for the economy. It, for example, boosts consumption, so you have more consumers out there, for causing businesses to have a reason to invest, having consumers. So I think the debate gets oversimplified about the economic impacts, but really it's a power question. And in the long run, my view is that these kinds of policies and stronger unions are good for all of society.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the resurgence of manufacturing jobs in America with David Matlin, who is the Senior Fellow of the American Worker Project at the Center for American Progress. More after a break. This is Fresh Air.
All right, so you're hearing it, people. You're hearing the truth of the matter. You know what I'm saying? For so many years, they've been lying to us, businesses. Oh, can't pay you more, we'll go out of business. And I've been saying, if y'all making millions of dollars in profit a year, how in the world are you not paying your people more? It makes absolutely no sense. And when you pay your people more, you get better work out to people. Like, come on. It's common sense. Common sense. Pay your people right and you'll get more in the long run. Better production, everything increases.
And from Dignity Memorial.
So they talking about $30 an hour is a premium wage compared to 15, 16. They've been cheating us for the longest time. We really need reparations. And I'm talking everybody, not just African Americans, but Americans, the working American. They need to pay us $60 an hour, not 30. 30 ain't jack. 60. It need to double again. What we making now need to be double, and all overtime need to be double time.
And he's written for several publications. I'm really fascinated in the automotive industry and the shift to electric vehicles. You know, the automotive industry has a strong union. I mean, that has gone through decades and decades of work there. That foundation is strong. What do these union initiatives look like in what is now becoming a new industry? And where are we seeing union movement the most active?
Well, we're seeing a lot of attempts to unionize the electric vehicle components of the auto industry, and that's for a couple of reasons. One is it's seen as the growth and the future of this industry, but also this is the sort of basic fact that new facilities, especially when these are either done by totally non-union companies, either foreign or domestic, or they're done by these joint ventures. So the traditional unionized employers in the auto industry, Ford, GM, etc., will create these joint ventures oftentimes for their new electric vehicles facilities, and those start off as non-union. So it creates, in order to get the good union contract, the workers have to mobilize and engage and say, we want to form a union, we want to bargain a collective agreement. So but there still is some organizing in the existing, internal combustion space. There have been long-standing challenges there. The story is that in the 1940s, after decades of fights, the workers succeeded in winning a union for GM and Ford and Chrysler, and were able to basically dominate coverage for the industry, and the gains of these union contracts, they had about 100% density in union membership in the core auto industry, and they spread out those gains to the rest of American workers. Academic studies will show this was a key piece of building the middle class throughout all of the United States. But
they trying to take away the middle class now, the Republicans, for the most part.
For a whole bunch of reasons. There was the parts manufacturing got spun off, and that was not necessarily as unionized as the core internal combustion. And then you had foreign competitors coming who started off non-union, and you had the GM and Ford also going to the South, which was traditionally non-union. And so you have that basics, and then this new electric vehicle industry coming, and it's really a question of, is there going to be a future for unions and more broadly potentially for the middle class here? And that's why I think you have so much at stake with this electric vehicle facility unionization efforts.
These factories, though, also look a lot different than traditional automotive factories, too. They're smaller. The jobs are slightly different. Does that pose a challenge for unions in there's not a workforce that's just going from working in traditional automotive factories to then these electric car factories, or is there?
Well, the thing you're getting at is that manufacturing is a skilled profession. It takes a lot of training, and especially in these electric vehicle facilities, to be able to do the job right. And so there are certain skills that transfer, but additional training is needed for many of the new jobs. The other thing I think you're getting at is what happens to, do you need the same number of workers? And because the batteries are kind of a simpler technology, not a simpler technology, but they have less parts than an internal combustion engine, there's the potential for less jobs in these electric vehicle facilities. And that's one of the other things that's happening here. Is there's a question about how much of the work in the whole auto supply chain is going to be done domestically. For recent decades, much of that had been shifted offshore. But the Inflation Reduction Act and the like have these domestic content requirements and encourage more onshoring of manufacturing. So while the electric vehicle, each individual electric vehicle might require slightly fewer workers, if there's more work coming onshore, there is the potential for even growth amongst the unionized workforce in this sector.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to David Matlin. He's a senior fellow with the American Worker Project at the Center for American Progress. We'll be right back after a short break. This is Fresh Air.
And this is Michigan Public. I'm Mike Perini. You can listen anytime on your radio, online, on your mobile device, or on your smart speaker. Texas